Hello everybody and welcome here on this live stream of Sunday evening 27th August already 2017 in case you watch this video much later. 9:30 p.m. Central European Time, Brussels time, Belgium time so to say, because that's the place where we live stream this from. So tonight we are going to dive into the Prelude and Fugue in E flat minor, obviously of J.S.Bach, book 1. I'm going to talk about that Prelude and Fugue. I think we can fill this hour with that. So in case you are new here to Authentic Sound, my name is Wim Winters and this channel is all about exploring the music from Bach to Beethoven by sharing my performances and my research with you, hopefully to inspire you on your journey as a musician or as a listener. And exploring, that's what we're going to do tonight in this E flat minor Prelude and Fugue Masterclass. Before we're going to do that, just a few things that I would like to say to you. Next Tuesday, that's the 29th of August, don't forget to watch the live stream. We are live streaming then on location in the 16th century chapel here nearby. You will know that. I've been recording some videos and sitting in front of that chapel lately and also inside. So we will actually play Prelude and Fugue number 1 to 8. So that was the project of these months. Bach with the Clavier live for you on YouTube from that location with a live audience. And as things are now, the chapel will be packed with people, with about 50 real people here in actual in Belgium and real people, hopefully as many as that on YouTube live. So, and as always, these masterclasses are made possible by through my Patreons. That's a website on Patreon. So the patrons, they support me through a website called patreon.com. There's a link in the description box. You have different options there. For even 1 cup of coffee a month, you can support the projects that Authentic Sound is heading for, and there are many, as we will talk about more in depth in the future videos coming weeks, because September will be a kind of a rich month from where we were to where we plan to head for. But patreon.com is a wonderful place just with a small amount to support the things, and we are now with a community there, about 30 people supporting the things we're doing, and that's great. Most important reward level, I think a reward there is a monthly hangout with you where we have a video call and we just chat on music or just on live or whatever, get to know each other a little bit better. So that's actually my list, and I have to look, my list that I had to address before we started. Now I'm going to change my computer screen and say hello to you if you're already in the chat. Anya, of course, as always, is moderating the chat. You know that. So Mikael, great to have you here. Mohamed, great to have you here as well. Expecting you because you promised that, quote unquote, in one of the comments. Great to read that. Katsuhira Takino, good afternoon. Greetings from Brazil. Welcome back here in the live stream. Glenn, always glad to have you here. Philip Daniel, hello also to you. It's good afternoon there. Here it's good evening. That's the wonderful thing about these live streams. People connect worldwide. Philip says, I just uploaded the first 7 of my monologues for piano, included the score in the description. That's something, if you don't know Philip Daniel, you should check him out. He's a wonderful composer. Murillo is here. Great to have you. And Mike, good night, he says. Also, good one tonight. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much. So, if you have questions, of course, you put it in the chat. If I miss something, as always, Anya will notify me. She's actually over there. And she was just smiling a little bit, not knowing if I would turn the webcam. No, she doesn't like that. But anyway, no, she's still smiling at me. Don't worry too much and say some nice things about me in the comment section. I think I'm in trouble now.
I'm just gonna say good night, or good day, or good morning to everyone.
And goodbye to me.
No, you have to you have to answer the questions. So
great. So if you
give a lot of questions for Will.
Yeah. have me work. So if you have a question, leave it in the chat. We normally have a delay between what you're seeing and what I'm doing of about 1 minute, which is already awesome. This is just a YouTube channel, but I've changed some settings and now the delay should be less than 15 seconds. So I could respond immediately. But again, if I missed your question, Anya is there to yell at me. Nice, I hope. So why not starting with playing for you that prelude, also to give people the opportunity to tune in, because sometimes it takes 5 minutes for YouTube to notify everybody. And then we already perfectly in the mood, hopefully, to have a lot of things to be discussed or to be shared with you, or you with me, or you with us here tonight. Okay, I'm going to close this microphone for a minute so that you have a better sound only through the Neumanns. This is really new for me with the new mixing console. I just press one button. If things explode here, it was nice knowing to you, but I don't think it will. I hope so. I certainly hope you will hear something still. So I press that button now. There we go. Okay. Shame that we have to talk now.
Everybody is listening.
Yeah, Anja says everybody's listening. Okay. Okay, Mikael says sound is fine, video seems a little bit choppy now and then. Yeah, that it's possible because I changed the settings now. So with less of a delay, can be that that's a result. So it's a kind of test as well. So if the video is a little bit choppy, as Mikael is writing, let me know. I don't think I can change that during the live stream, but then we know that for future live streams. Okay. To start with the end of this piece, and we're going to talk about the movement and the tempo because that might have been a little bit surprising to you, and that's actually also surprising to me as well, to come up with a tempo that is maybe very slow. And I will be talking about that also in relationship to the metronome numbers of Czerny, because I wasn't checking with that, but something very strange happened there. But to start with the end, what is unique to a clavichord, of course, is if you press a key and you press it harder, the pitch increases. Yeah, you can easily hear that. So, of course, that's not supposed to be like that. When you play a clavichord, you should not only control the attack, but you should control also the sustain. So when your finger is on the key, have it completely silent, because if you move it, even when the sound is dead or is gone, you'd still hear this kind of liveliness that's coming out of the string, and then the release is obviously also to be controlled. So it's very much like on an organ, where you have to control the attack and the release also very carefully. That makes an organ expressive. Here in between the attack and the release, you have the sustain of the note that has to be like there. But there are, of course, several layers, several amounts that you can apply between the beboom and not doing anything on the clavichord. So this is obviously vibrato. That's sometimes applied for a special effect, or just for coloring the music or the melodical line or whatever. But between very steady and the vibrato or the beboom, which is actually a constant raising of the pitch and going back to the original pitch, you have a lot of in-betweens. And here at the end, there is something I can show you that I believe a clavichord is unique, and I apply all the time. It's here in this D at the end. If you play it very straight, it sounds like this. So again. And now with what I add. So I touch the D, there is an attack, and then immediately I go a little bit higher. Not exactly on the attack, because then you would have an immediate raise of pitch, but a little bit behind after that. See? So, and that's such a nice effect that I actually apply a lot of times. When people ask, do you never apply the beboom? Yeah, I do. I mean, that's the obvious vibrato. But these in-betweens, that's actually what makes it so interesting. Because if you have the note very flat, like you would have on any other instrument, keyboard instrument, then you get this feeling of Emanuel Bach is actually writing on that. So in English he calls that the bleeding of the note. So that you have, once it is played, the sound goes down, and you have it given live again by this pressure. So that's constantly something I do. Microscopic small, and in fact the effect is huge. On recordings you can hear it, but certainly when you hear the instrument live, you're not aware that it happens all the time, but that gives this special feeling of connecting all notes together in a way that makes the clavichord unique. Okay. So now on the tempo. Just seeing the chat. Mikael is here. Yeah. The grave Duretsit section of BWV 564, is that the toccata darja and fugue in C major? Don't know. The diminished seventh chords, yes, that's wonderful here. So, I believe I played this piece a few years ago on YouTube. I didn't check until today. I haven't got the time to check, but someone wrote to me that it's 2 minutes faster, so 2 minutes less in length, which is really a lot. And I was very happy with that recording. I've told you that during in one of the temperament videos that I left out, that particular recording for the celebration CDs, or the 3 CDs, your selection. Not because of the performance, because I liked it very much, because of the temperament. So, all to say that choosing your tempo is something that can fluctuate over time, and there is no real right or wrong. It's only an interpretation, and that's of course the great thing about playing that music, of which we don't have any recordings. And I can imagine if we would have recordings by Bach, that he would have changed, of course, over the years in performance, and who wouldn't? The thing is though that there is something that must have been there in that notation, that must have or otherwise said that the notation must reflect the original idea of Bach, and that's of course the intriguing thing to find out. In this kind of notation where you have a 3-2 bar structure, in case you don't have the score, I can maybe show you. We probably all know that. Preludes. Oh, sorry. That's a 3-2 with a very open structure. So you have these chords, 1, second time, third beat, sudden shift. So harmonically speaking, this is something that is very open. If you remember that when we talked about notation and the relationship between notation and tempo choice, then we started from a kind of normal tempo for a given time signature, and if that within that time signature, for instance, the common time 4/4, where you have a harmonic density that emphasizes, or that is naturally emphasizing the grammatical accent, so on 1 and 3 of the bar, and you have a note value not faster than 16ths, then you have a tempo ordinario of about 60 for the quarter note. But from the moment that the harmony is getting more dense, giving accents to more than just 1 and 3, maybe even on 8 notes, so that's decreasing the tempo. Once the structural note value is going beyond 16ths, that's suppressing the tempo. So about this you can read actually very clear, even as late as with Czerny's piano school is written there. So here, I'm just saying that's kind of opposite to my approach that I had, where we have a very open structure, harmonically speaking. If you go and see the note values, then you would not expect in a 3-2 to have 16th notes structurally. Here you have a lot of 16th notes, and there you can say, well, are they just filling up some space or ornamenting longer notes? Some of them certainly are, like. So that's just an ornamentation of here further on you could say, well, here still ornamentation. How to decide whether those notes are ornaments or just a structural note value? Yeah, that's hard to say. I don't think there's a written law about this. But with such a clear harmonic structure, it's hard to escape from those 16th notes to be really more than just ornaments. So, but they are there, the 16th notes. So that leaves me with nothing to quote unquote defend my choice of tempo, but the effect. So, and that's an important one, but that's something you can, of course, not exchange certain metrics about. It's feeling, it's emotion, it's what you make out of that. And so I was given this piece a lot of reflection. And one of those spots, and that's typical, you remember that we talked maybe in the past more than now about Leopold Mozart's violin school. He writes there that first, every good musician will recognize the tempo immediately. So I have a problem here because I have a problem. I have some difficulties, I'm a little bit confused. But he writes also that every composition has such places that you cannot play faster. There you have a kind of boundary, kind of limit. Of course, that's up for debate, and that's something you have to develop. But once you are aware of that, you start seeing actually that much more than you would think. And in this piece, I had such a particular places. Like for instance, in bar 1, 2, 3, 4, actually in the beginning here. You have such, to my feel, a clear phrasing here. This ends here, so this is for me an ending. So a kind of heavy beat on the second beat, which is in accordance with the sarabanda. This is a kind of sarabanda tempo. Strong. So what to do here? So Bach gives actually, at an end of a phrase, a kind of a weird ornament. It's this one. So this trill, and then you have this F and E flat. And if you play this somewhat faster, so I have to, my motoric feeling is not up to it. It gets hurried. I need more time here. I need more time there. And it might sound stupid as an argument, but that's for me the most important thing. I'm talking a lot about notation and the relationship between notation and your tempo choice, which reflects also on your movement. And you know that movement is what the music makes or breaks. But tempo is the one thing that you can measure. But for me, the thing that decides actually everything, but that's so hard to talk about, since you cannot grasp that with your two hands, it's if I feel I need more time to get the structure right in my head, or to understand, or to finish the first sentence to go before I go to the second one, that reflects my tempo choice enormously. Because if I don't feel myself that I had enough time to overlook what happened and I'm prepared to go further, then you as a listener certainly will be lost. That's a kind of law. You can be sure of that. If you have a performance or recording and you're not 100% sure of what story you're telling, then your audience is lost. That's something you can take a bet on with everything you have. If you can play this faster and you are sure about what the piece is about, and you have found a structure in which you are crystal clear what you are telling, communicating, then it's no problem. But to me, this was one of the places that decided me to go slower. Yeah?
As a hero asked, did Bach use mathematics in this song?
So Anya was asking that, yeah. So Kazuhiro asks, thanks for answering me. I think that's something that was in the chat. Studying with my mathematics teacher, she said that every musician is a mathematician. Bach really was. Yeah, that's. You have had some books at the time, in the 80s, with Kees van Houten. I knew him in the time very well. He wrote Bach and the number, and of the art and numbers. I don't think it was translated in English, but he worked with someone of which I forgot the name. But it was fascinating. They derived from the works of Bach a lot of numbers that they put in kind of perspectives, and it was really amazing to read. Obvious things that if you have this Bach number BACH, it's 2, 1, and it's the number 14 and 41. 41 and 14 were very important. And that you have a lot with ornamented last sentences that exactly had 41 notes. So Bach was playing with that. The other higher level of combination of numbers, like for instance, I remember the Passacaglia, they figured out a system which was quite fascinating, that you had if you divided, I think, the prelude with the fugue, you had the number of pi, those are 3.14, number, exactly. That's possible. I don't know. They played with a lot of things in those days that symbolically that we forgot about. But I do believe that a good musician is a good what's the word? Mathematician. Thanks for writing that. So anyway, continuing with our tempo choice, that was one very important spot for me to decide the tempo. So, and then you start having room to fill in with other things. That's the great thing about that. So for instance, at the beginning, if you have the chord at the beginning, and then you have a repetition of that chord actually, that's extremely difficult. Because if you just start to play this, then to my feel, we miss something of this very first, very intimate chord, where you have this B flat as a melody, clearly, but so close to. So there starts a process not only of making sound, but also finding the right effect from the first chord. So not waiting for something to happen, the first chord, the whole piece should be told, period. So if you feel that this piece is about feeling kind of anxiety of pain or the most depressed situation of loneliness, then you should feel that at the first chord. In a piece like this, you should, I think. On the clavichord, of course, you have the possibility of dynamic differentiation, which you kind of have on the harpsichord as well if you have two manuals. But in those times in German areas, there were but few of those instruments. But anyway, so using another stop on a separate manual is something different, because let's explore this. So you have this B flat, which is a little bit louder since that's a melody, but very close you have this third, this third. So this. So not like this, but like. So the more I can separate this B flat from its accompaniment, the more I create, as I feel, this atmosphere of being completely lost. That's how I feel that. If I add to that, of course, a trill, which is totally legitimate to do, then I make my life a little bit easier, because a trill has, of course, an extended lifespan. I have several attacks, while the left hand has only one. So if I just give an accent on my right hand, not on my left hand, so like a piano player would do, and if I just be very honest, I just make a little bit of an arpeggio out of the first notes, so to make the difference as big as I can. So there we have the separation of the two, melody and chords. But then comes, so there you have the atmosphere, is right, but then comes the movement. So we have chosen our tempo, but the tempo has to be translated, brought to a movement. I mean a movement in sense of moving. And the thing that decides for the whole piece, the movement, is the second chord in the left hand. So now we are in trouble, because we have had a kind of accentuated beginning in the right hand, and I made myself a difficult life here. I tell you, so not that you should copy this, but I'm steering this to the extremes. So we had to have the separation of the left hand and the right hand. So the left hand, although it's on an accentuated, kind of accentuated note, that's the beginning of the piece, no escape from that, needs to repeat itself. And as I feel it, obviously, even with a decreased sound level, because I cannot even find a word for that. It's not the slower. It's the opposite of loud. Ask Anya. Softer. And now I tell you, now I have the B flat on my right hand. If I release that too soon, you hear this. Hear that? Zip. If I release that much earlier, much quicker, you don't have that, but you have a very abrupt ending. So there is no option to do that. So can you not? I hope that just by playing, people say, well, the clavichord is a difficult instrument. Now you see why, because you have not, of course, the technique mastering that's one thing. But then you have a zillion options that you have to play right, otherwise it won't work. Like just releasing this B flat is awful. So I need to release it soft, very slow. But not too soon, because I don't want to have that zoom. It's also the way where these tangents are harmonized, so you can flatten it a little bit more. Then you have this less, but then you have less dynamic possibilities also. And then comes this left hand. So that's difficult. So the way I'm doing this is waiting a little bit. Again, this circular movement. Remember that? Once you have set in a movement, it goes up, you have energy. It comes to a point where the energy is falling back, but still is going faster, and then you go back up. As long as you feel that, there is no problem. So I wait a little bit in my left hand for that chord to come. And you could say that just by taking that perspective of having all these details, and like I'm discussing now, that from that point of view only, I need that time to do that. So that's also a tempo indication for me, but that's not something that I can say, well, that's written in the music, because I'm still working from molding this effect, this emotion, this mood that I want to have in this piece. And after that, if there's something in the chat, I can read it. But then I finish this first. Then, by having this accent on one, having used this kind of energy of the first beat and only giving then the second beat, which gives a kind of new energy, I have possibilities in the third beat to even delay something I want. And by delaying that, not until it breaks, but just within what is possible, I get this long melody. So that's just a really connection between this. And I make an ornament. I like that so much. You have this. You feel it? And then once, like here, sorry, when you give a little bit more in the left hand, then there is a world that changes. And that's the situation I like, which is a kind of difficult situation because the slightest thing you move, is if you consider all these things sliders, so you have the right hand, you have the release, the attack, all sliders that you can put in different positions. Of course, the more you have, the more difficult it is. But I like that situation because once you just slide a little bit with one, the effect is enormous. Like here, very, very soft left hand, accent. Suddenly the left hand gives life to the right hand. And then to really close this first line, I was asked by, I think it's Daniel Weitzman. He comments often on the channel and this was while reading as well. He said, why, if you take this tempo, not using that of filling this trill with the complete space? And that's something I did on purpose. Like, why not? Then I get a kind of accentuation on the E flat. How that's just hard to avoid. Because by filling this space that I have there with the complete, with the trill, so filling it out with the trill, it gives an increase of volume, a kind of crescendo. It's difficult, if not impossible, to make a trill the other way around on a clavier. So if I just hit that trill with a few trills, then I can have this Nachschlag, so these notes. And then I have the G flat where I want to have it as a start of a new sentence. Okay, I don't know if I've missed a lot in the chat with you, or you have something that's
Has asked something. The tempo one has take. Is here?
No, I just said I've missed something. So I see Kazuhiro talk about the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, it was all in that book.
You see it?
No, I don't see it.
It's above Dylan Verdold. Michael Weber 666. In tempo 1 has to take into account of the sustain of the instrument of the period.
Okay, yeah, okay. I was reading your question. I see it here. Tempo 1 has to take into account of the sustain of the instrument of the period. Yeah, sure. And I believe, so what Michael is referring to, if you have an instrument with a long sustain, then it influences your choice of tempo, that's for sure. So I believe that a clavichord which has a shorter sustain of tone, even if you have a brilliant instrument, I'm in love with my instrument, you know, so it has a relatively long tone for a clavichord. So if you press a tone, it's remarkable, though. But even compared to a harpsichord, that's much less. And I've always felt, but that's personal, that the shorter sustain of the clavichord helps the polyphonic music, certainly by Bach and later, because it enhances clarity. The clavichord, which is brilliant sound, what is longer sustain, also on the soundboard, you will hear this constant sound wave underneath the play. Is of course perfectly for the orchestra. That's binding the orchestra together. But as I feel it sometimes, then, but that again, that's personal. And if you listen a lot to harpsichord or play, you might get used to that. A little bit disturbing. Vice versa is possible as well. If you like that so much, then the clavichord can sound a little bit dry. So that's for sure. Although in live, and actually one of the problems with recording this, the clavichord is not capturing too much of the sustaining sounds of the sustaining strings, or the sympathetic sounding strings. That's what I should call it. So because that's disturbing on the recording really hard. So. But yes, of course, and if you play in a room with a lot of reverberation, then it affects the tempo as well. But there is a general view that you have to develop with the piece in order that you can adapt it to different types of standards or different types of situations. But not that you change your basic view on that too much. Over time, of course, you can, and why not? But what's in the center of it, your message should remain there. So, we can talk a lot about on this prelude. But to close this talk about movement and tempo, and why I choose this tempo, so I got also a remark that. Very, very, very nice remark, actually, by someone. It was a private mail, so I won't name his name, but it's no problem. He said, "Well, it's very, very, very slow." He was surprised to hear me play that slow, and he asked the question, "Would I have chosen the same tempo if I would not have given much thought about notation or metronome numbers?" Which, of course, for Bach we don't have, but we do have the metronomes by Czerny, which I believe are very, very close to the 18th century tradition. And it was an interesting question. And normally I would say, well, I don't know, because if you taking all of that information into account, yeah, of course it influences you. But in this particular case, I didn't, for the reason I was telling you about. So I started from the effect from the beginning of the chords to find out how to mold that feeling, that effect at the beginning. So my tempo came from that, and actually was a little bit confused with the notation because it was suggesting a more open performance. So I didn't check Czerny's tempo. But then something strange happened. After I received that question, I did check with Czerny. And if I take my metronome here, let's find it. Czerny writes 100 for the quarter note. And he writes lento und lento moderato. So lento and the time is really slow, really slow. And I always guessed that my tempo would be slower than Czerny's. So I checked, and this is his tempo. And remember, guys, this is a metronome number. But of course, it only tells us something about how Czerny saw this music and how Czerny played this music, because that we shouldn't forget. And the reason why I pay so much attention to metronome numbers, also with those weekly chats with Lawrence, and that we are heading forward to a major project with him, which will take probably 2 years instead of 1 year, is that for me, the most undervalued source material today are metronome numbers. Because we cannot, for me, those numbers are on the highest level of facts. We cannot manipulate them. we can think it's single beat, it's double beat. That's up for discussion. And I think if you really dive into them and really practically try them out, and the solution is very, very simple. But you cannot say you have to divide them by 7 multiplied by 35, and then again, I mean, it's either one tick or it's 2 ticks. That's it. And so it surprises me time after time that we have this information of that first 50 years of the 19th century, because after that period the metronome died a little bit in attention, certainly in the classical sense. And if I would say nobody is caring about them, I wouldn't be far from the truth. And statistically speaking, it is 0.00 attention. But imagine those things were ticking on those pianos of the day. Jenny metronome was ticking, and there is not such thing as a broken metronome. They can be off 5%, yes, that's possible, but even that is very close. Beethoven's metronome numbers that was ticking. I mean, there are even in this conversation books with his nephew, wherein his nephew was just setting the metronome and Beethoven was playing, and they were discussing that. And before the noonday, he was playing it a little bit faster, slower than the afternoon, so it was just one number of the metronome. But that's how, and it's 6 or 7 months before he died. So that's how important it is, and we are neglecting that. And so that's the reason why I take it so seriously, and I compare my performances with, for instance, here Czerny's, because Czerny was a student of Beethoven. Beethoven studied with what's the guy's name in Bonn? Neve, Gottlob Neve. And Neve was actually second generation Bach student. So Neve had lessons from students by Bach. Not to say that it was all still the same, but the tradition was there. And they started at that period to reconstruct really that 18th century that was about to be gone forever. Also with a renewed interest in polyphonic writing. So J.S.Bach was at the latest, at around 1800, a really big name, thanks to Forkel and others, and C.P.E. Bach, but that's for another thing. So that's the reason why I take this metronome serious. So 100, in my opinion, metrically, so double beat, is 1, 2, 3, 4 for the quarter notes. Just we have this as a tempo. So when I checked my tempo for that I did on the recording with Czerny's tempo in the understanding of Lorenz Gradient, again it was about the same. It's not very far off. And I understood the question that this person was writing, because probably he had checked Czerny's tempo in the metrical sense and thought, well, you have checked that metronome number before and inspired your performance on that metronome number, which in this case wasn't. But I can tell you, if you are serious about this, if you look at that music from the perspective that I'm sharing with you now, so searching for the effect, which is also Leopold Mozart writes about, it's the most important thing. What's the piece about? And look at the notation. See if the piece is in half note and quarter note and 8 notes, because that's the most important thing, of course, to decide. Then you start discovering so much different things, and checking that with the metronome numbers will give you often very strange experiences, like here, that I come from a faster performance. I reflect on that again and again and again. This was the last piece of these months that I've recorded. And I've been reflecting on this from the beginning of the project, so from the 1st of July, really, because this is a piece I wanted to have to nail really right. And then I come to a tempo of which I think, well, now I'm so slow, I'm not even taking the effort to compare with Czerny's metronome number, because I don't care, this is my performance. And then after having recorded, I do the check, and it's the perfect match. That's weird, but you will get used to that, because that kind of classical tempo feel, that's something that's very easy to awaken if it is not already there. Just go on your feeling, go on your understanding of the music, go on your find the speed that you in your head can follow everything you do, and you will develop that very soon. That is something that often occurs with me, and which is weird and not weird at the same time. But anyway, only talking about the prelude, but I hope you didn't mind. See if I... Yeah, Michael Wright, Lento was not so slow, I think. No, you're wrong on that. Lento was extremely slow in that period. We should read more those tempo indications of the time. Like for instance, I was having a kind of discussion with a colleague of mine who called me and who calls me regularly. He said, Andante, you said that this is considered to be a slow tempo. There's no such proof of that. Well, there's only Czerny in his Opus 500, and it's only Hummel in his piano school who clearly puts Andante in the slow tempo section. So why doubting about that? So Lento is at the bottom of the tempi. You have Grave, you have Larghetto, that's extremely slow, and that's written about actually more than we think today. It surprises me sometimes, not to give comment on you, Michael, because I can understand. It's what we have been teaching, are taught in music schools and conservatories today still. But if we take this serious, going back to look and to search and to reflect for what sound, how does this sound in Bach's or Beethoven's mind before he wrote one note? Why did he choose for this notation? And they mastered that. Notation was not something that was personal. I mean, they developed that, of course. They created style, they expounded that, but they worked within the tradition, because not only were they forced to do that, it was not like in our times that we can produce the most individual style of the most individual personality that we want. It was not accepted in those days. You composed according to the book, expounded that a little bit. When Bach returned from Buxtehude, he was almost fired because he used chords that were not acceptable in the church. When C.P.E. Bach started his career, he was put off the track of the gallant music, probably even by his father still, because counterpoint was dead. There was the old style, there was the geleerde muziek, that the people didn't want to hear that. So there was no option for Immanuel Bach to write, which he regret a lot. So there were more overall agreements that people just applied than we would today still think. So if Beethoven writes in Common Time 4/4, tempo ordinario, like we discussed in the beginning of this live stream, then he knew that the musician that had an education would understand what his tempo would be. So that's obvious. The reason that the metronome developed is there are several theories, but one of them is probably that the tempo rubato came along, and that this fluctuation of tempo was something that was new, and this kind of counter movement. And then later on, certainly from the 30s, 2025, 1830, 1835, 1840, there was a generation that increased tempo so much that the previous generation was complaining over that time after time. And then the metronome was used to prove that that generation of new players, technical, very skilled players, were missing the point of the classical music. And surprise to us today that the metronome numbers that old generation gave to prove that they were playing too fast are insanely fast. So that's. But Lento is very short, very slow. I can tell you that. Okay. I would love to go over the fugue with you, because there we can say a lot of things as well. But it's about 1 hour, and I think I have spoken a lot. Yeah, Michael writes, pity we have no metronome numbers in Bach's time. I can tell you that we have a lot of pendulum notations of the French Baroque music from the 17th century onwards, which we have actually, I mean as a community, been researching, and the book of Klaus Mieling is one of the main sources for that. But going through that book, you see that that's a clear, makes a clear statement for single beat use. So one, as the pendulum goes like this, it's one tick, one, 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 or it's one, one, two. It's very simple. But nobody is following that because it's impossible. Those tempi are insanely fast. And if you imagine that those pendulum notations of the French Baroque are actually always given for dances, often dances that are danced at the court so that people could understand how fast or slow that something had needed to be danced. That's impossible to do. So it's strange that we don't pay more attention to that and also look closer. Also a book like Klaus Mieling that's filtering out so much information to just prove, quote unquote, that it's single beat and that we should play faster, because there is a whole new generation, I think, of musicians that are influenced by that and by the idea that we today still are not matching the speeds of the 18th and 19th century and are increasing speeds like you cannot imagine, while not reflecting on the fact that we will never ever be able to reach even 20 or 30% of those speeds. And if we do, people get a shock because we are not familiar with what that means playing in the today's understanding of the metronome numbers and pendulum notations. Digitally you can manipulate, and I did that a few times and people were really shocked. Say that's not possible. That's how fast it then is. And yeah, that's a topic we can talk about for ages. Pontus asked to play the fugue. Yeah, that will I do as a closure for this video. And that's a nice suggestion. So there we go. It's a kind of, it's of course not old style, harmonically spoken, but it reminds me of that a lot. It's like a very cantabile style. I close this microphone perhaps. Oh, it's okay like this. So that's one of the most mind-blowing fugues, and I hate reading that because that's like the C sharp major. Everything is one half note higher or one half note lower, but it's worth the effort. So again, okay, so it's 10:35 p.m. here in Belgium. Time to finish this live stream. Thank you, Martin. I didn't know they had such emoji on YouTube. Okay, I thank you all for watching. Again, Tuesday, don't miss that live stream and share that with everybody you know. It would be great if we would match the number of people that are in the chapel with and in the live stream simultaneously. It would be really great also for the channel to do that. It would be great to have you and your friends on that live stream will play. That will be 1 hour Bach only, a little bit of introduction, and I will do maybe something on the end. If this is your first time here, because I see some people that I didn't know before, or I just missed in the comment section on YouTube. But if this is your first time, I would love to have you subscribed on the channel. And if you would like to have more of these live streams with us here, there is a bell icon next to the subscription button. Also, guys, if you are missing out notification for this, that's the thing you to do, to hit that bell icon, and YouTube will push notifications to your inbox or your mobile device really soon. Normally within 10 seconds you will have the notification for the live streams. Would be great. So thank you for watching. I see hopefully on Tuesday all of you, and next month we're going to do from left to right on the channel, try and things out. There's a video in which I ask your opinion, suggestion would be great. Many people have filled that in with great suggestions, so don't refrain yourself from going there and write everything down that you would like to see the channel be in the future, and I will listen to that and read that. So thanks for watching, and we see each other very soon again. Bye.